Dr. Tessie, I'd like to ask about the announcement last week by the CSIRO CEO, Dr. Larry Marshall, about the effective dismantling of the CSIRO climate science program. Was the Bureau of Meteorology consulted before Dr. Marshall made that decision?
I was contacted 24 hours ahead of it that an announcement was coming.
So that was the level of consultation?
Yes.
So what do you see the impacts on the Bureau of Meteorology are going to be? I mean, currently in the climate science program, let's start with, where the proposal is to lose about 100 of their 130 or 140 positions. What will the impacts be on the Bureau's work?
That is still unclear. I can tell you where we are connected and what might be an impact, but CSIRO has yet to announce the fine detail on exactly what they are stopping. Our engagement is around understanding the physical basis of climate change, and that's got really three components to it. Making observations in the ocean, on the land, on the ice, and the second component is really about Earth system modelling, so it's building and running climate models that can project out into the future. And the third is just the physics involved in actually improving those models, so scientists that work on the guts of the models, if you will. So that's where we are engaged with them. And we have a joint research centre called the Australian Centre for Climate and Weather Research, which has got those scientists involved in collaborative projects. They're working on models. They're making atmospheric observations at Cape Grim in Tasmania and at other locations as well.
So given that those joint facilities in particular, so the research centre and at Cape Grim, if, as seems likely, given that 100 out of the 130 jobs are going, that there will be a substantial reduction in the CSIRO staff in those joint centres, how do you see that impacting on the Bureau's role of those centres?
It's very difficult for me to say. I hesitate to speculate on this. It could be all kinds of things.
Are they in jeopardy? Is Cape Grim in jeopardy? Is the research centre in jeopardy?
It's unknown. I have asked that question, and the answer is that we're not sure. We're still working out the detail. So you haven't been told what the detail is, other than that there is. Correct.
But you expect that there would likely to be significant impacts given the scale of the cuts?
Well, I'm drawing attention to several areas where we're working together where we are dependent on CSIRO collaboration. And there are many areas, and it will depend which ones of those areas are actually changed. And
so if the staff from Cape Grim or the staff at the research centre, if the CSIRO staff no longer exist, I mean, with that scenario, how will that impact on the work that you do jointly?
Sorry, Senator Rice, I think that's starting to stray into a hypothetical question. You're asking.
Well, although we're in a situation where 100 of the 130 climate science jobs at CSIRO have been we've been told are going to be gone, which means the vast majority of
that issue was dealt with earlier on, and I think this is very much straying into a hypothetical now, Senator Rice.
A way forward. Do you have the capability to do that yourself without CSIRO's input?
If CSIRO exited Cape Grim completely, it would create something of the order of a $460,000 per year budget shortfall for what is a jointly funded station.
And your research centre, if CSIRO exited completely, would you have the capability to continue on the level of research that you're currently doing?
Well, I wouldn't refer to the research centre per se. What I would refer to is the work that is being undertaken by the researchers in that research centre, and that's chiefly around the development of Australia's climate model access. CSIRO play a very significant role in the development of that model. If they were to exit, it would leave a hole in the national development capability. It's not isolated to CSIRO, I might add. The Bureau play a role, the Centre of Excellence in Climate Change Science play a role, others in universities also play a role. So CSIRO aren't doing everything, but They play a very significant role, and if they were to exit it completely, then yes, it would have an impact.
And have you got any commitments from CSIRO for any further consultation with you in the decision making as to which staff are going to go?
Yes, so channels of communication are open.
So what's the consultation process that's proposed from here?
I and a senior executive from CSIRO sit on the oversight governing board for the Corker Joint Centre, and so through that process we have agreed that CSIRO will provide information in as to any movements in capability that they might be contemplating from here on.
So provide information, but will you have any ability to influence the jobs that CSIRO are proposing to reduce?
Well, naturally I'll be persuading them as best I can, but it's not my decision, of course, to determine how they allocate their resources.
How about with CSIRO's Land and Water Program? What's your level of collaboration with that program? Where we did about 100 jobs that are...
That is also very significant as well, but I am advised that none of the areas in land and water are likely to impact significantly on Bureau CSIRO connections. They're chiefly with other parts of the division's activities.
Okay.
Mainly around water information, I should add.
So no decisions have been made in either of these situations. It's still speculative. Is that what we mean?
No, we don't know.
So, Senator Rice, I think the question was for the officer, not for yourself.
Is that? I need to be clear just on what you've told us.
Look, first of all, Senator, all due respect, it's not me making the announcement. Okay. So the way I would characterise it is there's been a high-level announcement saying there will be changes in these areas, but the details are yet to be ascertained.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I needed to find.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks. Sorry.
And Senators, as I emphasised this morning, our understanding is that announcement is about a reprioritisation within the CSIRO, not about a net reduction in either funding, nor staffing, nor activity, but a recognition that over time priorities change, priorities shift from the extent to which you might measure what is happening with the climate in terms of analysing the science around climate change, to investing more in technologies to do with emissions reduction or adaptation.
Could I just respond to that and perhaps ask Dr Vertesi how...
Sorry, Senator Rice, in terms of responding, it's not a debating forum, so if you've got a further question to ask of the Minister or officials...
Given that the Minister has just put that framing around it, whether Dr Vertesi, the climate science that CSIRO do, how much of it would you characterise actually at the moment as being climate adaptation research or of relevance and necessary in order to assess how Australia needs to adapt to climate change?
Frankly, I do not have a good grasp of the full breadth of CSIRO's work related to climate change. I have a good understanding of the work that they do on the physical basis to climate change, which is where we collaborate together, but I'm not really qualified to comment on the peripheral stuff.
But things like the projections of how Australia's climate's going to change, that's a joint Bureau and CSIRO product.
Yep, so exactly. So
and that product is how does that, is that, can that be characterised as just measuring what the climate does, or is it, relevant to climate adaptation?
Okay, so you were referring to the State of the Climate report? Are you
Yes.
talking about the IPCC model projections, or there's a whole range of
and
things?
the natural resource
Plans,
NRM
yes. Yep.
predictions that were I understand were a joint CSIRO Bureau product
Okay, so
last year.
those two documents, and to a lesser extent State of the Climate, but the model projections that we submit to the IPCC as part of the assessment process and the NRM reports that you've referred to, both come from our joint collaborations. So what they are about is using the models to actually project out into the future as to what the impacts might be.
So it's fair to characterise them as being critical to how we then adapt to climate.
Yes, they are critical.
So